When you hear the term political refugee, a certain image probably comes to mind. Someone fleeing for their life, right? But what if that powerful term was being used as a cover for something else entirely? Today, we're diving into the pretty complex world of Nepali asylum claims, and believe me, the story is not at all what you might expect.
So, that's the big question, isn't it? What is the real story here? Are we talking about widespread political oppression? Or is there something else, something much bigger, driving thousands of people to seek asylum in the West? Let's dig in and find out.
Okay, before we go any further, I just want you to look at this number, 99%. Just let that sink in for a second. What on earth could a statistic that high possibly mean in this situation?
Well, here's your answer. And it's pretty staggering. According to deep analysis, an incredible 99% of political asylum claims coming from Nepali citizens aren't genuine. They're actually driven by economic goals, with these carefully made-up stories designed to fit the asylum system. That means only 1%, just one, are truly fleeing for political reasons. And that, right there, brings us to the very heart of this issue. It's this huge gap between the story people are telling and the actual on-the-ground reality. So let's break down the claims versus the real motives.
So on one side, you have the official claim, a harrowing story of political oppression, no freedom, and even threats to their life if they go back home. But then you look at the other side, at the real reason, and it's almost always a search for economic opportunity, a legal work permit, and that big prize, permanent residency, or PR, in a Western country.
So you might be asking, how exactly do they pull this off? Well, there's a pretty well-known playbook for this, and it's called the asylum route. It's basically a strategy that's been figured out to take advantage of loopholes in the asylum process, letting people completely sidestep the usual, much stricter work visa requirements.
And it's really a simple three-step process. Step 1 is entry. You get into a country like the US or somewhere in Europe on a temporary visa, usually a tourist visa, which of course doesn't let you work. Step 2 is the claim. Before that visa runs out, you file for political asylum. And here's the kicker. Step 3, the benefit. While that asylum application is being processed, which can take years, you get a legal work permit. You can live and work there. It's become a backdoor to economic migration.
Now, to make these stories sound believable, a couple of key methods are used. The first is some serious coaching from agents and even lawyers who basically teach applicants the exact script to follow. The second method, which is really common in the US, is using fake marriages. They're arranged purely to get a green card, and then often, after a quick divorce, a new asylum claim is filed on political grounds.
But, a trend this massive doesn't exactly go unnoticed. The sheer volume of these claims has finally triggered a major international crackdown. Countries are not just taking these stories at face value anymore, not by a long shot.
The main hotspots for these claims? We're talking the United States, a lot of Europe, especially France and Spain, plus the UK and Australia. And these nations are now talking to each other, they're sharing information, and they're working together to stop this misuse of their asylum systems.
And this image pretty much says it all. This is the new reality. The days of just slipping through the cracks in the system, well, those days are over. The false claims are being caught.
This crackdown isn't just talk. There are real actions being taken. First, strict scrutiny. Officials are now doing incredibly deep dives into every single claim. Second, they're exposing patterns. Agencies are sharing data on all the common, recycled, false stories they hear. And finally, legal action. Authorities in the US, Europe, and Australia are actively prosecuting people for fraud.
So, what happens when these fabricated stories finally fall apart? Well, the consequences are more serious than they've ever been. For a whole lot of people, this is the end of the line.
This quote from senior advocate Gandhi Pandit, who's actually practiced law in America, just nails it. He says the purpose isn't political, it is purely economic, and it seems like international authorities are finally in complete agreement.
So, the bottom line is this: when a claim is proven to be false, the outcome isn't some long, drawn-out legal fight anymore. It's direct, it's pretty quick, and it's deportation right back to Nepal. But the real damage here, the real tragedy, goes way beyond the people being sent home. The biggest cost is paid by that tiny 1%, the few who are genuinely in danger. Their legitimate cases are now met with so much suspicion because the very system they desperately need for survival has been totally compromised.
And that really just leaves us with this final, very sobering question. When a system that was designed to save lives gets completely flooded by people trying to get an economic edge,
What hope is left for the few who actually genuinely need it to survive?